Hi everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as Michael Olise chooses Manchester United. Erik ten Hag has a bit of a quit threat and we'll also digest yesterday. I really want to talk about some of the players from yesterday later on in the show as well, because did we get it wrong in the player ratings? A lot of people yesterday were giving Bruno a 7 or an 8 out of 10, Rashford a 7 out of 10. I don't know whether we were watching different games, but we'll talk about that later because there is bigger topics to talk about. I want to get into that Ten Hag story and why I actually would say this morning that I think he won't be the United manager in the summer. Not because I don't want it to be, I just think it's becoming very, very obvious that INEOS think they know better. People talk about blind faith. I completely disagree with that. You know, accountability leads to better performance. We can't just sit there like fucking sheep and go, yeah, let's just do whatever they want to do. What's their track record? Last time I checked, INEOS didn't turn Nice into PSG. Last time I checked, Mercedes, INEOS are not doing very well in F1. Last time I checked, Dan Ashworth at Newcastle, they weren't doing very well. So, look, accountability, absolutely important on the road to progress. We must all ask questions of each other. But first of all, I want to start off with an exclusive. And it may not be the biggest exclusive, but the detail to it just adds an extra layer. Remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about players that Manchester United are in deep talks with. Olise, Todibo are two of those players that we are in advanced talks with. We're also speaking to Ederson of Atalanta. I wouldn't describe that as advanced, but we're definitely talking to him. Well, with Olise, what I can tell you this morning, and I knew this yesterday, but I thought it just was inappropriate just to drop it in. I thought we'd wait for the morning show. Olise, who is currently injured, I got a bit Irish there. Michael Olise, I've done it again. I know I've gone down to Glamorgan now. Michael Olise has gone and has told Manchester United this is where he wants to go. He's chosen Manchester United as his football club. Crystal Palace are powerless in the summer. They've got no say in this at all. He's got a release clause. He nearly went to Chelsea last summer, but he chose to stay at Crystal Palace and he signed a contract with a release clause. This is believed to be, according to Fabrizio, a lot lower than 60 million. So a lot lower, I think it's around 50. £50 million for Michael Olise. Crystal Palace out of the equation. They can't stop it. It really is about what Michael Olise decides to do. Palace know he's going to go this summer. There's a lot of interest in him. Whether he's right or wrong for Man United or, Juventus or Chelsea, we'll have to wait and see. But he is leaving Crystal Palace in the summer for 50 million or around that. Crystal Palace can't do anything about it. It's about what he wants to do. Man United have had those talks. I believe he's actually a Man United fan, but he wants to come to Old Trafford. That is his choice. So on the basis of that, Manchester United may well have secured their first summer transfer window signing already in mid-March. However, and this is not what I've been told. What I've been told is, and I know it's a very good source, big shout out to KP, but the point is, Michael Olise wants to come to Manchester United. United have held talks with him. There is no transfer fee to negotiate because the release clause is what United feel is about right. It may well involve Wan-Bissaka going back. We might give Palace 25-30 million and give them Wan-Bissaka as well. That could happen, but ultimately you give £50 million to Palace, they can't do anything about it. I think the interesting thing I would add to this is because it looks now like it's going to happen. But what I would say is this reminds me a little bit of, and I want to talk about, let's just do a little bit of a poll here before I say what it reminds me of. Would you be happy with Olise for 50 mil? Let's get a yes or no in the poll going there. One thing I would say is, it's exciting. I want to talk about the player in itself in a moment. But what I will say is, we did do this 2 years ago with Akanji and a couple of other players where we were well ahead of the summer. We spoke to players. They wanted to come to Manchester United. And then the summer came along. There was a new manager. And the new manager was like, I don't want to do that deal. So, yeah, I would just be... That's me. That's not what I've been told. What I've been told is that Olise wants to come to Man United. Man United have had a lot of talks with him, and the release clause is there. So I would take from that, you're well into the 80-90% club that he's going to come to United in the summer. And there's a lot of interest in him as well. So I'd probably put it up more around 90% because there is a lot of interest in the player. He's very, very talented. He's still very young. He's delivered in a Crystal Palace side, literally with goals and assists. There is a talent there that people are looking at. And Man United have put some work in. He wants to come to United. Deal can be done easily. In effect, the deal is done. It's done in the sense that right here, right now, he'd signed for United. United are interested in him. But what is a deal done now? All I'm saying is, come May, come June, what circumstances will United be in? I think there's a few barriers I'll talk about in a moment, but I'll tell you for free, Akanji, 2 years ago, was a Man United player. We'd spoken to him. He wanted to come to United. It was all done in that sort of Ranić Murtar era around February and March. The summer comes, Ten Hag comes in. I don't want Akanji. Sorry, Akanji, the deal's off. He ends up going to Man City. So who knows what change could cause. Now, what I would say about Olise is, I want to add this in, is that really exciting player. You know, I was speaking a few weeks ago about Neto or Olise, and I probably would have favoured Neto just. But Neto went off injured again yesterday. You know, you talk about injury prone. Neto's injury record is, even I would just say, I really like Neto at Wolves, but I've got to walk away from it because I just can't have another player we can't have another season like this. You know, we've got to build a team on ability, but also injury record. We can't buy players that are good players that are always injured. It just doesn't help. Look at what we've been seeing for the last few weeks. So I think Olise over Neto makes a lot of sense. But what I will say is that what you've got with Olise is quite surprising. I wouldn't say it's on the Mason Mount level, but there's a couple of things that really jump out to me about this deal. So we've spent the last few months, weeks, whatever, in deep conversation with Olise. He's agreed to come to Manchester United, and that's the situation right now. So the deal's there, it's done. He's chosen us, he wants to come, we want him, exciting, exciting. Two problems with it. First of all, as much as he's an exciting player, who gets the credit for this? Because we've been talking to him before January. So it's not an INEOS deal. This is Murta. This is Murta and his recruitment team with Ten Hag. And that's a bit of a worry because, well, INEOS are here now and Dan Ashworth's going to come in and Barada's going to come in. Now, I believe, from what I was told, Dan Ashworth was looking at Olise from Newcastle anyway. So he's a good enough player that it probably won't make much of an impact. But it is worth just saying that players we're talking to at the moment, deals we're doing at the moment, are via the Ten Hag Murta recruitment with the sign-off from INEOS. But, you know, INEOS have to be involved, but they've not done the groundwork on this. This is a deal that's been done by our current recruitment team with the sign-off from INEOS. So that's quite interesting because, well, it might be okay for Olise because he's a good player, but what about all the other? What about Todibo? What if Dan Ashworth says I'm not interested in him? So that's a bit of a problem. But the biggest thing for me, and I suppose it's the most exciting thing, is if we're going to do this deal, and trust me. I mean, Ananda says he'd rather go for Kubo. Kubo's a very difficult deal to do. I do like him. I like Olise. Very exciting deal. I can see there's a lot of excitement in the chat. And, you know, it looks like it's pretty much nailed on. The interesting thing / exciting thing is, and I suppose you've always got to hold things up accountably and dissect them. 50 million quid on a winger. We need centre backs, we need midfielders, we need a striker. 50 million pounds is a large percentage of our transfer budget. At the moment, that's 50% of our budget because our budget's only 100 million. We can only afford 100 million at the moment. Granted, we're going to raise money from sales, but even raising money from sales, I don't think we're going to be much, top out about 200 million. So 25% of the budget going on a winger. I find this really interesting because I would not spend 25% of my budget on a winger. I wouldn't do it because I've got Garnacho and we're not going to get rid of him, and I've got Rashford and we're not getting rid of him. So what are we not just doing another Mason Mount here by buying a player that isn't actually priority? I'm excited by the signing. I think he's a good player, but is he in your top 4 priorities? Because he's not in mine. I think we need 2 centre-backs, 1 or 2 midfielders, and a striker. I mean, you could say that's 5. You could argue we need a left-back more than we need a right-winger. So, yeah, exciting deal. Can only deliver you the news. Sometimes the news isn't necessarily what you want as the priority, but that's what United are doing. That's what Olise wants to do. Let's see if they follow through on it, because there's still 2 months of the season left and a lot can change. But United are at the forefront of this deal. He wants to come to us. We want him. Yeah, I mean, it's just... but it is interesting because you've got Garnacho, who's 19 and has to play every week because he's getting better and better. You've got Rashford, who the club won't sell, who is on 300 grand a week, whatever. Where would Olise even start? Are we spending £50 million on a bench player, or are we actually going to bench somebody that's, you know, good? So that's exciting to me, but it's a bit of a red flag as well, because I'm sort of like, we've got a lot of wingers, and we know Sancho's going to go, and I would imagine Greenwood probably goes, and they'll probably do something with Anthony, who just looks finished, doesn't he, at the moment? But it is interesting, and yeah, get your comments in. We need a centre midfielder and a centre-back more than a left winger right now. Also, if we miss out on top 4, that's 100 million shaved off the budget for transfers. We need to prioritise. That's from Akash. Mark, would it be better to get Rooney from Copenhagen, says Gunnar. He's a good player, but I don't think United are in for him. Rich Gray, thank you very much. And the new manager will need to buy new players. Sell, so why not just back Ten Hag with a clear out and new players, and then if that doesn't work, sack him, says Jared. Well, we're going to talk about Ten Hag in a moment. So now we're buying subs for £50 million, says Mark Langbridge. Look, I could take you down roads that maybe some of you want to go. I could tell you things and rumours about... you know, apparently Rashford's not getting on with Ten Hag, and one of them's going to have to go in the summer. Also, I could tell you stories about plans to make Garnacho a number 10. I could tell you stories about Rashford converting to a striker. And all of those 3 scenarios would make Olise make a lot of sense, because if Rashford leaves, Garnacho goes back to the left and Olise goes on the right. If Rashford goes up front, the same thing happens. If Garnacho becomes a number 10, Olise goes on the right. So there's lots of stories there around that. What we'll have to just wait and see. I mean, look, if honestly, I was told last Monday Rashford, McTominay and Bruno absolutely not leaving. And I will tell you my opinion on the way that Man United is run, and I believe it's still run, is that if they had to choose between Rashford and Ten Hag, they would choose Rashford. I still believe that that football club is running like that. I've not detected any change yet from INEOS. They're still there very early, but from the noises coming out of the club, there's no... They certainly don't share what some of the fans share around certain players not being good enough. They want to build around those players still, which is what the Glazers have been trying to do for 5 years. So around the Brunos and the Rashfords and the McTominays, INEOS and Sir Jim see them as key players that they want to build around for the next few years. That's very well sourced. I told you about that on Monday. That's very, very well sourced. That's within the club sourced. So that is really well sourced. And you know what? It doesn't surprise me. But these are the things that you've got to hold your own opinions on what the club is, because there are people out there that, we've always had Glazer cheerleaders. Of course we have. I believe there are bots out there. I believe there are accounts out there that Glazers run, because, not personally, but we had that story from Gary Neville a few years ago about, somebody that United employed, some American guy who was an expert in social media, who would purposely do things to boost the popularity of an unpopular player. So United are very switched on about this, and we've had it for years. The same thing is happening with INEOS. I was speaking to somebody last night, a good friend of mine actually, and they were just saying we've got to trust INEOS. We've just got to trust them. They're good people. They want to do what's best for Man United. We must trust them. And I see some people saying this on social media, and I'm like, well, no, we shouldn't. This is a football club. Like, there are numerous football clubs around the Premier League that have trusted owners and sunk. I mean, it's happened to our football club. There is no perfect owner anyway. No football club has a perfect owner. They don't. And we want to pretend that INEOS are perfect. They will make mistakes. They might fail. Hopefully they're going to be successful. But we can't just, you know, have blind faith that every decision they make is going to be the right decision. And honestly, if you're picking players over a manager again, I don't see any change. I don't see any change. And that's the story coming out of the club again, that there are players that are beyond being sold. No matter what performance, there are players that will not be sold. That's no different from what we've had for the last 5 years. Jose Mourinho had this with Martial. He is not sellable. I don't care what you think as a manager, he is not sellable. And we still have that now today. I know that we will not sell Bruno, Rashford or McTominay in the summer, and it's March. And I know that. I've been told that, really well sourced. So unless something amazing happens in the next 2 or 3 months, that's not going to happen on what is meant to be the biggest summer we've had in years. I suspect this summer we will move Casemiro and Varane on because of wage and age. And Wan-Bissaka will go, Sancho will go, Donny, Martial will go, Brandon Williams will go. I would not be surprised if we still have Lindelof, Maguire, McTominay, Eriksen will go, obviously, Rashford, Bruno. Those players will still be here. And those 5 players, Maguire, Lindelof, McTominay, Bruno, Rashford, were the core of Solskjaer's team. That's half of Solskjaer's team. Lindelof and Maguire at centre-back, McTominay was in the midfield, and Bruno and Rashford were playing. So that's half of Solskjaer's team staying next season and the season after that. I'm not saying all of those players need to be sold. I wouldn't sell 4 of them, but they are still here. And INEOS are signing that off. Why? What's different when you're happy to keep half of Solskjaer's team who have sacked Solskjaer, Rangnick and Ten Hag's on the download? So, in fact, some of them were here for Mourinho's sacking, if we're being honest. And of course, people will talk about Shaw. Mr. Limpo says, what about Shaw? Ginger Red, it was the backbone of Solskjaer's team as well. And to know that before the summer's even hit is amazing, really. You look at Varane yesterday. Why are we letting him go? He's playing every 3 days at the moment. He's playing really, really well. Why is Varane going? You know, even I said in January I would let Varane go, but I wouldn't let Varane go now. I really wouldn't. But look, what I wanted to say is that look, I've got to play devil's advocate here. Dan Ashworth did a good job at Brighton. Newcastle this season, are they having a great season? You know, they finished 4th last year. He's done a decent job. We're acting like Dan Ashworth is just some sort of Messi of the director of football world. Sir David Brailsford, great record in sport, but not in football. Sir Jim Radcliffe, lifelong Manchester United fan, making decisions that don't actually make it look like he supports, not that he does, that he watches us. Like, why would a lifelong Man United fan say we can't sell McTominay, we can't sell Bruno, we can't sell Rashford? If you're watching the team, that would not that. If I sat all of our fan base down and said, would you sell McTominay, would you sell Bruno, would you sell Rashford? On some of those players, it would be north of 70% selling them. So you're telling me Sir Jim's in the minority for everything? I mean, I don't get that either. So I don't believe in blind faith in the new ownership. I think that's a stupid way to live. I think you've got to hold people in position of authority accountable, because nobody's perfect. The job is huge, and we don't know what the ulterior motive is. The Glazers still own half of the football club. So I think we have to scrutinise everything, because blind faith just because what? You know, I don't know. Maybe some people are on the payroll. I don't know. And I'm certainly not going to have blind faith because journalists are on the payroll again, because let's be honest, they've caused as many problems at this football club over the last 10 years as anybody. You know, their current agenda is incredible. And, you know, these journalists have been sympathisers of the Glazers for the last 20 years for the majority of the time. They only changed their opinion in the last couple of years because of you. You know, so look, I think you've got to have your own opinion on this. Anyway, let's talk about Ten Hag. There was an interesting story in the Mirror yesterday saying that Erik Ten Hag could well quit this summer if the contract that INEOS offer him reduces his power to ridiculous levels. Some of you might be quite happy about this. I don't think Ten Hag's going to be the manager in the summer, by the way. I don't know whether I just woke up this morning and reality hit or not, but I just think the movement's venomous. I think it is. Like, I'm not going to call anybody out this morning because there's no point in the media, but we won a game of football yesterday. I had match of the day on. I was watching something else. I was listening to the radio last night, and it's just like they've gone. Like they've made their mind up, and they are not going to change their mind. The media have decided that Ten Hag needs to be sacked, and it doesn't matter what happens. Even if we beat Liverpool next week, it won't matter. They've made their mind up. I'm listening to people go, yeah, United won 2-0, but on another day they could have got beat 6-0. And I'm like, hold on a minute. Rooney said it as well. Everton had a lot of shots, but they didn't have a clear-cut chance. Man United scored 2 legitimate penalties. Pickford makes a great save from Bruno Fernandes. Garnacho is so close when he puts it over the bar. That's 4. Bruno had a cutback, which was better than any other Everton chance, and skied it. Manchester United may have, if you're saying Everton could have scored a couple, Man United could have scored 5 or 6. So United legitimately won the game. As for the chances conceded, well, we know why we concede chances, because we give the ball away in the attack. The midfield is getting overrun because the defence is so deep. But as Ten Hag said, the defenders he's using at the moment like a low block. Lindelof and Johnny Evans like a low block, and he basically said it in the interview. They like a low block, and they're confident in a low block. And to be fair, there were a lot of shots from the edge of our box, from the edge of our penalty box, because the low block wasn't letting them get in behind. So, look, as I said, the decision has been made, and I think we're heading towards Ten Hag getting the sack. And I suspect INEOS have already made their mind up on that. And I find that incredible. I find it arrogant. I find it stubborn. And it's going to be very, very hard for me and some other people to swallow, because I just disagree with it. I disagree with it. But I think it's going to happen. I mentioned a couple of days ago that there may be some mutual parting of the ways story where Ten Hag sort of says, it's not the job I signed up for, and INEOS are sort of like, this isn't the manager that we chose, and we just part ways in an amicable way. I think we're sort of heading towards that. And I think there's a few hints of that as well when you look at what Ten Hag said in his press conference. I welcome this, but he's starting to become like Rangnick in the sense that Rangnick was just very blunt in that March before he left. And Ten Hag has started being really blunt as well. He said on Friday in his embargoed section, he said that the medical team told him that he'd have 2 fit left backs in January. So they let Reguilon go back because you can't use 3 left backs. Matt Malassia's not even fit in April. Luke Shaw got injured straight away. So he's calling the medical team out, which is great, but unusual for a manager. He also said it's really hard to build a team spirit because players are like islands now. They're more in groups with their friends and their brands and their agents than they are with their teammates. I thought those 2 things on a quiet news day would have been massive, actually. He's basically saying that his players don't like each other and don't work together, which we've known for years, to be honest. Rangnick said this. We knew it happened under Ollie. We knew it happened under Mourinho. And he's also saying that the medical team is shit. So yeah, I think it's really interesting how he started doing that sort of thing. Because I think what we're starting to see is what happened with Rangnick. Rangnick sort of got to a point where he was like, I'm being thrown to the wolves here. And the press were horrible to Rangnick. They were absolutely horrible. You look at some of the stuff that Luckhurst and Manchester Evening News spoke about Rangnick. There was some, I thought it was very, very unbalanced, and he was sort of ridiculed in a way. And other journalists did it, to be fair, as well. And there are big similarities. And I think Rangnick looked at it and went, in fact, I remember speaking to somebody who was advising Rangnick a couple of years ago, and, absolutely top person. And they were just sort of like saying, look, there's just nothing we can do to turn this around because the journalists just don't like him. And it was very, very clear that they didn't. And I think Rangnick got to a point where he was like, I'm not going to be the fall guy for this. I'm not taking the responsibility for this. And he started talking about open heart surgery, etc. And I sense something similar is happening with Ten Hag. I think he's realising that, the media's against him, no matter whether he wins games or not. Obviously, some of the fans are against him. And I think Ten Hag's getting to that point with, look, I take responsibility as the manager, but I'm not totally responsible for this. And I think we're starting to see things come out now. And I respect him even more for that, because if you know that you're going to be held accountable and blamed by INEOS and they're going to get rid of you, then yeah, 100% start putting stuff out there about the real issues. And he's right about the dressing room. He's right about the medical team. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, ultimately, I think they're going to make a change. I do. I think it's just becoming relentless. How much of it's you win a game of football and people treat it like a loss. I mean, I just don't get that. I really don't. I was at the Everton game. Stretford End was complaining about McTominay non-stop. He needs to go, says Joe. Acid says, Olise, absolutely not. I want proper wingers like Chiesa who are out of contract, says Acid23. Why would you want to get rid of Bruno, though? And can I ask, what do you see in Ten Hag that makes him a good manager? I saw you say about De Zerbi last week. I watched get outplayed by Copenhagen, says Sean. Probably crap, Mark, but Sky Sports have just tweeted saying Sir Jim Ratcliffe is planning a bid for João Neves of Benfica. 100 million quid, Raz. I can't see it. I'd love it, but I can't see it. Would you take Braithwaite over Olise, says Risham? I'd sign Braithwaite before Olise because I think we need a centre-back, and I do like him. He's still very raw, Braithwaite, but I like him. He's got that... not Braithwaite, Branthwaite. I'm talking about Branthwaite at Everton. I hope that's who you mean. I watched Branthwaite yesterday, and... he's just got that aura about him. I think he's going to be a really good centre-back. We need a centre midfielder and a centre-back more than left winger, says Akash. I think we'd read that. Thank you very much. A few things I want to come back on here. Carlos says Ten Hag should walk away from this toxic club. I'd prefer Bakayoko over Olise, says Luke. Eric Ten Hag not objective enough in player selection, says International 2675. Well, let me just come back to that from International 2675, and also a great point from Sean Turner about what is it I see in Ten Hag. Look, I'll be honest with you. I always am. There's a massive part of stubbornness here with me. And this is what makes me laugh. It's like, I think some people just get really, really determined to be right. And I've never hidden the fact that I'm being very stubborn about Ten Hag. Like, I am. There was a point when we lost to Forest and he took Mainu off at half-time and brought McTominay on and we lost. And I said, I'm almost at the point where it doesn't really matter who the manager is. I just don't think we should sack another manager. I think the players have got to go. So there has been times this season when I haven't even really backed Ten Hag. I've just sort of gone, we shouldn't sack a manager before the players. We've done it for 10 years. This time, we've got to get rid of the players. My priorities are clear out in the summer, and a new manager jeopardises that. They do. Ben Foster said it a couple of weeks ago. He's been there when a new manager comes in, but we know anyway. A new manager comes in and they say, I want to give everybody a chance. I'm not selling anybody in case you sell the wrong person first. So that terrifies me, of course it does. But you know what? If I can just say one thing here. International says he's not objective enough with his team selections. And Sean talks about being outplayed by Copenhagen. I absolutely can only give you my opinion on this because, and have your own opinion on this, but I always, whether I agree with you or not, normally can see your side and I'll just go, well, I disagree with it. They're very passionate. I just disagree with it. But on this particular topic, I really can't understand what you're talking about. And I'll tell you what it is. It's this constant, we've got no style of play. We're conceding loads of shots. His team selections are rubbish. And not allowing for the mitigating circumstances. Like, or when people keep saying, what's the style of play? They're playing shit. I'm like, Everton are better than us because they've got more fluidity in their team. We should beat Everton, but they don't have the injury crisis that we've got. They can play a left back. They can play a centre forward. They had two forwards yesterday, Beto and then Calvert-Lewin came on. Mikolenko is a left back. They've got a balanced squad. We've got better players, but we don't have a balanced squad. People say, why are we playing shit football? Did you not... I mean, again, are people not watching the match? Like, for the first 5 minutes yesterday, we tried to play out from the back. In the first 30 seconds, we tried to play out from the back. Onana had it twice. We're trying to pass with Lindelof and Onana and Varane and Casemiro, and they give it away. So as a manager, what am I going to do? I've told them and I've given them the tactics. We want to play out from the back. We want to play out from the back, play through the press and get at their defence. And in the first 3 or 4 minutes, I watch us and they can't do it. Like, people talk about style of play like we're not trying to do it. We can't do it. We don't have the players to do it. And that's why people like Martinez and Luke Shaw are so important, because we can't play out from the back. We're trying to do it, but we can't do it. And nobody allows that. They're just like, Ten Hag's a shit coach. What's his style of play? But they're not watching the game and going, I can see what he's trying to do. He just hasn't got the players to do it. And that's because of the injuries. In a straight up analogy, it's Mother's Day, but don't think about your mother with this one. Imagine your partner. Could be a girl, could be a boy. Let's just call it your partner, right? Your partner, every Saturday night, is relaxed. She's had a hard week. On a Saturday afternoon, you go out shopping, you have a couple of drinks, you have a lovely meal, you get home, it's Netflix and chill. And you know what I mean. You know the rules. She is rampant. She's loving it. It's brilliant. 10 out of 10. Every Saturday night, she's up for it. And this is brilliant to be part of. And then what happens is, on the Friday, it's a bit icy outside. She slips over, she breaks her hip. She wakes up on the Saturday morning with the broken hip, and then she catches COVID. You try to take her dancing and you try to take her out to the club and everything like that. She's got a broken hip, she's in big pain, and she's got bad symptoms of COVID. You're back in the bedroom on Saturday night. She ain't rampant. She's the same person, but she's injured. She's ill. She ain't rampant anymore. 10 out of 10 becomes, if you're lucky, a handy. You know, and that's not what you're used to. And this is what people do not understand. They want this 10 out of 10 Manchester United, but they won't take into account the mitigating circumstances. They are mitigating, whether you like them or not. We don't have a left back. We don't have a striker. We've hardly got any centre backs. You know, we haven't got another number 10. It is a mess. And people start talking about style of play and expect... People are talking about, well, Liverpool have had a load of injuries. Liverpool have had a load of injuries. Why can't we play like Liverpool? Liverpool have got loads of injuries. Jurgen Klopp's been there for nearly 10 years. Every player that Jurgen Klopp has in his squad, whether they're 12 or 42, are his signings. Yesterday, the only two players that Ten Hag bought were Casemiro and Onana. And this is what I mean. People just will not allow the mitigating circumstances. They will not allow it. And I can't keep... Well, I can, but I can't have it. I can't have this conversation because we are decimated. And we did see against Wolves, away from home, who are a good side, for 60 minutes, the high press, the high defensive line, and chance after chance after chance. We did see it. I remember it. Go back and watch it. But when you play against Fulham or you play against Everton at home and you've got Johnny Evans and Lindelof or Maguire and Lindelof in your back four, you've got to defend on the edge of the box. You've got to defend on your edge of the box. But you still got to try and press. And when you press and lose the ball, like a lot of our attackers do, they're going to get to the edge of your box and they're going to shoot. The reason we're conceding so many shots is because we're playing a low block. And the reason we're playing a low block is because we don't have the players to play a high line. If we played a high line, we wouldn't concede as many chances. We have to concede the space because we press, we give the ball away, they get at us, our defence is waiting on the edge of the box, and they do shoot. But they're not great chances that are being created either. This is the problem. I can see it. And the only counter argument is, well, let's stop getting broken on. But that would mean the whole team parking the bus. And we're playing at home to Everton and Fulham. So I can see it's not... Look, we didn't play well yesterday, but I can see how it happens. But, you know, some people just don't really want to see it, I don't think. And also, would prefer... Let me just say this. Alif, welcome to the Members Club. Every streamer looks up to you, says Partib. I don't know about that. What are we going to say when there's injuries next season, says Robert. Well, we will have injuries next season, Robert, but the key is to be in a position like Jurgen Klopp, where if you get 5 or 6 injuries, the 15 players you've got left are yours. That's the Liverpool argument Mike dropped. Like, people talking about Liverpool's injuries, it's a stupid argument. It's absolutely stupid. Liverpool can win with loads of injuries. Yeah, okay. I don't care if Liverpool have got 15 injuries. Out of a squad of 30, Jurgen Klopp bought them all. Or recruited them all, or promoted them all. Every player in Liverpool's squad is his player. Because he's been there long enough to build his squad. United get 5, 6, 7 injuries. You know, you're using half of Ollie's team. You're using a Mourinho signing. We need to be, Robert, next season, where a manager has got a team, a squad that he's built. And this is not a Ten Hag squad. And it wasn't a Mourinho squad. And it wasn't an Ollie squad. And it wasn't a Van Gaal squad. Because we've never given a manager long enough to build their own squad. And the next manager that comes in will have Ten Hag players, Ollie players, Mourinho players, maybe even some Van Gaal players, and then his own players. And when he starts failing after 2 years, and the same people are saying sack De Zerbi or sack Nagelsmann, I'll sit here again and go, I told you so. At some point, we've got to back a manager for 5, 6 years. Because that's how long it's going to take to let them build a squad like Klopp. Klopp didn't have a team of his players after 3 or 4 years. It takes 5 or 6 years. And that's why I'm very stubborn about this. But I think he'll be gone in the summer. I think it's very clear that as, was it Whitwell or was it Ducker? Oh, no, it was Ornstein. As Ornstein said, I think he said INEOS are tunnel visioned and will ride out the storm. And I don't think they're going to take much of account of what we think on anything. I think they're going to do what they think is right. How do you think Rashford's PR team has managed to make a narrative where fans are supposed to feel sympathy for him when he's not performing and downing tools, says Zion. Alif, welcome to the Members Club. Got to fix the structure before we start a witch hunt for Ten Hag. That's why he was successful at Ajax. I want to get your thoughts on this. So 64% of you say you would be happy to sign Olise for £50 million. That seems like a long time ago we were talking about that now. Make sure you smash a like on the video, by the way. Don't forget, tonight, it's Sunday night show. I tell you what, just before I talk about Rashford, Bruno and everybody else, what a day today. I mean, I'm loving this show. Thanks everybody who's tuning in. I think that, you know why I think I love this show is because the Olise story just gave us something different, positive, progressive. Whether you want him or not, the fact that that's a prospect, that's a new player that comes in, I just feel quite positive about that. But it's an exciting day anyway. That's football, is the place to be. Aston Villa against Spurs, 1 o'clock, and then Liverpool against Man City, 3:30. So I'm going to be on That's Football double watch along today. And then we've got the Sunday night show at 7 o'clock, of course. We've got Fabrizio's on the show tomorrow as well, so we'll be able to get a bit about the other transfer stuff from him. But what I wanted to talk about is Alif says, how can players work with a leader who is bad decision maker? No PR and no idea how to improve with players' morale. At least even if we lose, football should be entertaining. I mean, I've answered this, Alif. I mean, this is what I'm up against. And I respect Alif, but this is what I'm up against. I've literally just spent 10 minutes talking about this, and still we have fans who blame Ten Hag for players not being good enough. And they think that you can take, Mark Noble and turn him into Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, look, maybe you don't watch football on a very deep level. Maybe you've never played the game. I don't know. But you can't take players and turn them into... Why didn't these players do it for Ollie then? Why didn't they do it for Mourinho? Why didn't they do it for Rangnick? Why aren't they doing it for Ten Hag? Because it's the players. Like, you can't polish a turd. You're not going to turn Scott McTominay into Muller, Thomas Muller. It's not going to happen. And look, watch the game. Watch the game. Watch the first... Don't even watch 90 minutes. Watch the first 5 minutes yesterday and then tell me what United are trying to do in the first 5 minutes. We're not booting it long to get it out of danger. We're trying to play out from the back. We're trying to play out from the back and we can't do it. So there's your tactics for you. They're not working because the players can't do it. I mean, I've never seen such a bad heart of football from Casemiro in his whole career, by the way. Neil says he's not getting the best out of what he's got. Bollocks. Absolute bollocks. I don't see, again, like, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a toxic, divisive argument based on something that you believe to be true and I know to be false. You can't, what can you do with Marcus Rashford then? He's not getting the best out of Marcus Rashford. Why is that Ten Hag's responsibility? So no player is accountable anymore. It's Ten Hag's fault that Marcus Rashford's been bad all season. Is that genuinely what we're now doing? We're being sympathetic to a set of players that have sacked 3 or 4 managers and putting it on another manager. So it was Ollie's fault that the players, he couldn't get the best out of the same players. It was Mourinho's fault that he couldn't get the best out of the same players. It was Rangnick's fault that he couldn't get the best out of the same players. And now it's Ten Hag's fault that he couldn't get the best out of the same players. You know, that's 3 or 4 managers with some of these players. Maybe, just maybe, the reason 2, 3, 4 managers couldn't get the best out of them is because they're not good enough. And maybe when we're trying to play out from the back against Everton, like we were in the first 5 minutes, it's not working because the players aren't good enough. So if you want Ten Hag to get the best out of these players, what you're saying is, instead of trying to play out from the back, we should just blast it. Kick it long and chase after it. Because that's all these players are good for, some of them. Like, you know, if that's what we're going to do, if you want to get the best out of these players, let's boot it. Let's go long ball. Because they can't play out from the back. So, and you can't turn a player like Lindelof into Virgil van Dijk. You can't turn a player like Scott McTominay into Kevin De Bruyne. And you can't turn Marcus Rashford into Mo Salah. So you're not turning these players into these players that you want. So if you want to get the best out of these players, let's just boot it long, get the ball up the pitch and chase it. Because that probably will suit them better than playing out from the back. And this is what I mean when people say, he's not getting the best out of the players. We should be playing a better brand of football. You know these players. You've seen these players. You know they can't play that brand of football. So why are you pinning it on Rangnick or Ollie or Mourinho or Ten Hag? We've seen them for years. They can't do it. And on top of that, their mentality is they can't do it every week either. They won't do it every week. I can name you players at that club who played yesterday who will not play well each week. And that's on the manager, is it? No, that's on the guy looking back at them in the mirror. They're inconsistent players. They won't, you know, they won't turn up. I've worked with people on a Monday, they don't want to be there. Tuesday, they're not quite there. Wednesday, they're a little bit better. Thursday, they're working really hard because the weekend's coming. People have different mentalities. What United need are players that turn up on a Monday morning and want to work hard all the way till the last bell on a Friday. And we don't have that. And until we have that, every manager will fail, in my opinion. Start of the season, he said we can be transition team. We have players that suit that, but the issue is he hasn't had a stable team to work with, says Rahul. Look at the first 60 minutes against Wolves away in January. That's how we want to play. The defensive line's on the halfway line. We're pressing. We're compact. We're not conceding loads of chances. That 60 minutes again at the Molineux in January is the blueprint. That's how we want to play. If you want to judge him against Everton, that's up to you. But I judge him on that 60 minutes against Wolves because that's the closest we've had to having a balanced team. Right, I want to ask you about this one. Yesterday, in the player ratings, you gave Bruno Fernandes 5.5, 5.8, I think. I give him a 5, average is 6. Yesterday in the player ratings, I think Rashford got similar, around a 5, under 6. And there was another player as well. I forget who it was. Anyway, my point is, I saw from some journalists and on social media, a lot of people yesterday were saying that Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford were good. Not just average, were good. In fact, one journalist gave Bruno Fernandes an 8. Everywhere. Captain's performance. Somebody gave Marcus Rashford a 7 as good. Did we miss something yesterday? Because the day after the result, you know, you can be quite emotional after a game of football. Of course you can. Did we miss something yesterday? I just wanted to ask this. Did we miss something yesterday? Because to give Bruno an 8, like some people did, and then we gave him below average, that's a big gap. That's a very big gap. And, you know, Rashford to be given a good performance when we said he was below average. Again, did we miss? Look, I'm not coming back on this yet until I've read some of your comments because we might have got it wrong. We might have got it wrong. You know, I'd argue that 200,000 people don't tend to get it wrong over 1 or 2 people on social media. But, you know, maybe the majority is wrong on this one. Magic says Bruno, yes, but not Rashford. Asama says Bruno did do well. Let him speak, Simon, says Pep. Has Bruno had an 8 this season, says Warren G. Partip says it's stats merchants. That's what we are. They were dreadful in reality on the eye test. 8 maybe too much, but did perform well, Bruno, says Antenna. I think Bruno was a lot better yesterday. Had a good game, in my opinion. And an 8 for scoring a penalty, says Dylan. Standard of journalism is going down the toilet. Bruno was a hard 5, says Shifty. And yeah, the journalists are on drugs, says Matthew. Aaron says there was a lot of improvement in Bruno, no improvements in Rashford. And Tommy says was awful like most of the players. Well, look, Rashford tracked back, but didn't do much offensively, says Kim. And I think, you know what, that's on Rashford very quickly. I think that he tracked back and he celebrated the penalty. I think that was enough for people to give him a good performance, because honestly, I want to see Rashford scoring. I want to see him interested. I saw him walking off the pitch. He looked miserable. I still think his body language is way off. I don't know what it is. You know, maybe the rumours are that he has fell out with Ten Hag. I don't know. He doesn't look right. Maybe something's going off in his personal life. I don't know. I don't think Rashford looks happy. I don't think he looks engaged. I don't think he looks energetic. I think he's going through the motions. He was tracking back. He scored a good penalty, but I'm not giving him a 7, and I'm not even going to give him a 6, because I know what Marcus Rashford is, and if we give him a 6 for that, we're accepting that he's not the player he used to be. You know, you have to be held by your own standards. An average 6 for Bruno would be, you know, an average Bruno performance would be a 9 for McTominay. And somebody said in the chat yesterday, you can't do it like that. You've got to judge players equally. Well, you can't. You can't. Marcus Albrighton, 8 out of 10, is not better than Messi on a 6. Like, each individual player has their own standard. If Bruno Fernandes puts a 6 in, that means he's had an okay game. 6 average doesn't mean shit. I think some people get lost with the word average. Oh, he was average. But average actually means you did what was expected. You know, he had an okay game. 7, you had a good game. 5, you were below average. And that's why I gave Bruno and Rashford below average. I give them 5, because if that's their average performance, if that's their good performance, we're fucked. But if that's their average performance, then their standards have dropped. That wasn't Rashford on an okay day, and that wasn't Bruno on an okay day. I thought they were both better than they have been in recent weeks, and hopefully they'll be even better against Liverpool next week. But I haven't seen Bruno Fernandes have a typical Bruno game this year, this calendar year. I can't remember the last time I gave Bruno a good. He was better. I liked some of his passing, but I think we should be expecting a lot more from him. And Rashford, I just don't think he's anywhere near his level at the moment. Hopefully he can get back there. But yeah, I did want to answer the question, but I didn't see that. But look, it is really interesting, isn't it? You know, sometimes you hit on things that you didn't expect to talk about. When you look at Lindelof, Maguire, McTominay, Bruno, Rashford, that's half of Ollie's team. How many years ago did Ollie get sacked? It's 3 this year. None of those players apparently are getting sold this summer. You know, what is this INEOS thing then? Like, what are they actually doing? Like, you can't have half Solskjaer's team surviving another manager. So, you know, what's going on there? I don't know. Brighton and Brentford don't have De Bruyne and Virgil, no, but they still play good football, and De Zerbi took over Potter players' training and tactics, says Alfred. Yeah, Alfred, I have got no answer, not because you've made a good point, but because it's just tiring. You're not listening to me, are you? Go and watch the analogy about the rampant rabbit who's 10 out of 10, and then she breaks her hip and, you know, gets COVID. We don't have a left back. We don't have a striker. We've got massive injuries. We haven't got the players who can play that brand of football. In fact, you defeat yourself. You defeat yourself, Alfred, because De Zerbi took over from Potter players. What style of football did Brighton play under Potter, and what style of football did they play under De Zerbi? It's basically the same. Possession-based football. Players that can play a brand of football. I can't get into a debate about that because you're locked in on what you think is right, but you've already given me the tools to prove you wrong. Potter's style of football was basically the same as De Zerbi's, and he inherited that. Yeah. What did Ten Hag inherit? The worst ever Man United Premier League side, under 60 points, toxic dressing room, players falling out with each other, no brand of football. Yeah, and you know, it's as simple as that, isn't it? I can't say anything else. The one thing I blame him for is falling out with the players. Some of them have been so public, and his job is to keep them on side until they go, says Dylan. Well, I disagree with that. So a player that turns up for training late, just let them get away with it until you sell them. It's not how it works. Start of the season, he said, thank you very much, Rahul. Play Ahmad. What does he need to do to get minutes? I think the Ahmad obsession is something that I'm not really bothered about. I don't really get it, to be honest. I think it's always weird when fans are obsessed by a player that's never proven themselves. And obviously the counter to that argument is, well, he needs a chance to prove himself. He had a brilliant season in the Championship. He's not Lionel Messi. And Garnacho was man of the match yesterday, and apparently Rashford had a good game. So where would he come on anyway? Should he have come on instead of Anthony? Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that, but that's 10 minutes. People are talking about him starting. I just don't see where he starts. I don't see where he starts at the moment. And what if it doesn't work? Like, what if it doesn't work? He's always going to start Rashford. I think there's a pressure in the club to start Rashford. And I don't think the manager, whether he wants to or not, has much say in that. And you've got to start Garnacho. So I don't really see where this Ahmad starting games comes from. I agree that he should be coming on ahead of Anthony, but maybe he brings Anthony on because defensively he's better. Ahmad's not really a defensive winger, is he? So, you know, maybe that was just about some defensive work in the last 10 minutes. But I think with Ahmad, I like the player, but I think there's an obsession that he's something that he isn't. And hopefully he will be that. But nobody's got the proof that he's that. And I think some of our fans act like he's, you know, the second coming. And you know, I don't think that's fair on him or anybody to predict that's the case. I'd like to see him getting more game time, but I don't think we're playing. We're just trying to grind results. I mean, look, Scott McTominay has to start at the moment. That's how desperate things are. You're obsessed with Pellistri, says Frank. I think I wanted Pellistri to start because we had a lot more issues on the wing at that time. I'd have to go back and check, but Garnacho is playing really, really well. So where's Ahmad going to start? As I said, I don't think Rashford's droppable. I think if the club have to choose between a manager and Rashford, they'll choose Rashford. I still think Rashford has massive power in that football club. Until proven wrong, I firmly believe that. I think the fact that it's coming from the club that Rashford's not for sale anyway in the summer already, based on a how can a football club run itself like that? That a player has a bad season, and in March he's not for sale. I mean, who's wagging who here? Like, you're never going to be a big football club if you are prioritising players over what's right for the club. And I'm not saying sell Rashford. I'm just stunned that it's out there that when he's not for sale already. Rahul, welcome to Members Club. Thank you very much. Don't forget, Villa against Spurs. I mean, look, we still could get top four if you want to dream and be excited. I don't think we will, but there you go. I'm on That's Football for that. And obviously, Liverpool-Man City is a massive game. And don't forget, we're back tonight at 7 o'clock. And yeah, get in the comments. Look, go back to the start of the show. Olise, what are your thoughts on this? Very exciting. I mean, it won't be good for Ahmad. Won't be good for Ahmad, will it? Won't be good for Ahmad, actually, when you think about it. But interesting to see where he'd fit in as well. Take care, everyone. Absolutely loved it this morning, and we'll see you on That's Football a little bit later.